The following video you're about to watch is nearly an hour long. The original call went on for about 2.5 hours, and I've whittled it down into everything that you need to hear. So I highly advise that you sit through patiently and watch the whole video through. It will not be a waste of your time. I've been highly critical of everything in the reseller community as far as content. There are some good apples out there, but if we're being honest, they're mostly bad apples because reseller content is basically three things regurgitated over and over again. Either they are motivational speeches, surface level knowledge, basic things, or common sense advice repackaged as business advice. And this channel strives to be the complete opposite of that. Everything that we talk about, including its strategies, is going to be something that could help move the needle for anyone in the e-commerce field so that they could evolve to something better. I will be doing classes in the future, specifically talking about all of the strategies in this video. If you ever wondered why this channel is even called Pegasus Lounge, it's short for Pegasus Business Lounge. So if you're ready to upgrade from coach to business class in your business journey, then this is the channel for you. Hey, what's going on, loungers? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Mason T, and I'm a 20+ year importer / product developer. Now, today's episode is one of my best ones yet. Why? Because we are having a special guest on the show, and that doesn't happen very often. This particular reseller has always stood out to me because their actions validates my approach and everything that I've been saying on this channel so far since I've started it. You guys know him as Profit First Reseller. Now, here's a little spoiler. He's doing about $40,000 a month in sales, and that's more than most part-timers. In fact, it's over 12 times more than most part-timers and 4 times more than average resellers, yet he doesn't work 4 times more than average resellers. So let that sink in. If you guys are ready, let's start the show. How's it going, Joe? Welcome to the show.
Hey man, glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
All right, really cool. Okay, so got a couple of questions for you, about like 10 questions in total, right? So we'll try to get through them right now. So the easiest one in the beginning, right? Like, how did you get into reselling, and what were you doing before that? Tell us your hero origin story.
Yeah, just very quickly, my wife and I, before we even got married, we started a food cart together, and that was kind of my first legitimate business. I've started a whole bunch of businesses, small time before that, fixing computers and stuff, but we started a real business, had a Kickstarter campaign, had a food cart, that became a restaurant, and then as COVID was ramping up, we were ramping down the restaurant, just realizing that wasn't what we wanted to do with our lives. The profit wasn't there. It had become this enormous responsibility. We had 2 kids. So I was ready to just get out of the restaurant business. I was like, Heather, to my wife, we've been married for years at that point. We got married in the restaurant. We shut it down for a day. All the employees came and helped. It was like a dream. But then eventually, the dream became reality of like restaurant business is hard, especially during that time. And we were just struggling to even transition to the DoorDash and Uber Eats era. And because our margins were already so tight and they were wanting to take such a big chunk of it, especially back then. So my wife was so good. My wife Heather put the business up on Biz Buy Sell, kind of secretly. Like, you're not supposed to say the exact name of the business, but it was put up for sale. It was like restaurant in this neighborhood in Portland, Oregon, and people could reach out. And eventually someone made an offer and bought it, not for anything above essentially the cost of the assets in the back of the restaurant. We were like, just take everything, take the tables and chairs, take the fryers, take the flat top, take everything. So he paid us like 50 grand, but then of course we had to pay like 12,500 in commission to the people we were working with Biz Buy Sell and like all the lawyers and stuff. Anyway, it wasn't a ton of money, but we were able to leave that first business with so much weight. I mean, our bills were way more than 30,000 per month, and that's at best what we walked away with, and that's still, we got to subtract taxes from that. So I don't even know at the end of the day how much money we actually were able to take out of that business. We did take a modest paycheck all throughout the way. I mean, not to the point where we ever felt, my wife and I, like we could ever go eat out at a restaurant. We would just eat at our restaurant or go home and sleep and just work some more. Like it was a really tough life, but my wife was so good. And so we had a little bit of money, a little bit of ability to take the foot off the gas valve, the gas pedal, I guess, whatever. I'm mixing my metaphors here.
Mhm.
And I started selling on eBay. So while my wife, even for those last few months, while the business was for sale and we were trying to figure out a way to kind of slowly ramp this thing down, and then eventually we were able to try to find jobs for all of our employees. And it was so messy. It was just having employees, especially, just made it so heavy and sad to have to shut down a restaurant like that. It was just, yeah, it's heavy when you bring other employees on board and you are promising income for them, and then you have to say, sorry, I can no longer provide this income for you. But
Yeah.
yeah, I was also kind of like taking care of our two kids who were small at the time. And while my wife was still working at the restaurant super hard, doing catering gigs, running around all around the city, I was taking our two kids to the thrift store, setting them up in the toy aisle, and I would just go up and down all the aisles with my eBay app and just start scanning stuff. And so I just kind of learned, and the clothing was and still is intimidating. So I stuck to all the hard goods. Thankfully, especially back then, the hard goods section was still pretty big, so I could spend an hour or two in the hard goods section, then come home. And while the kids are napping or whatever, I would try to get them listed on eBay. And yeah, and that's kind of how the eBay. So that was about 6 years ago now. I kind of had started eBay. I did some gig work. I was actually doing DoorDash and Uber Eats deliveries at the
Oh.
time on my electric unicycle. I would strap a big backpack on myself, and this
Mhm.
electric unicycle could go like 40 miles an hour, and it had like 60 miles of range. So I could get a solid like 3 or 4 hours of work in, like a solid shift on DoorDash, and make $100 or so, maybe 150, and then get back. And that'd be maybe if I was feeling like the eBay was slow that day. But I eventually recognized, starting to think like a business, like, yeah, it is scary when you're looking at next month's bills and you don't have the money yet. All you have is this inventory in your eBay store. But once you trust the system, eventually I started to trust the system. Stuff was selling, and then I just started to put more and more of my effort into eBay. And so I started going into the Goodwill outlet bin, the Goodwill outlets. Some people call it the bins, full time.
Mhm.
And so from there, it's been about going up the chain and figuring out, how do I get this stuff in bulk? Where can I find used video games or used electronics in bulk? Is it at pawn shops? Is it electronics recyclers? Is it thrift stores? So I've just called everybody. Now at this point, I'll say I'll buy it by the pound. You don't even have to put the work in. You don't have to test it. It can be dirty. It can be unprocessed. Just hand it to me. I will pay whatever you choose, per piece, per pound. I try to be easy and easy to work with. And so, yeah, just trying to make it again more like a business, like recognizing that going to thrift stores is not sustainable, and the Goodwill outlets were tough. The Goodwill outlets were sustainable in a way. There was a consistent stream of fresh product coming into the Goodwill outlets that I ended up finding, but it was commute time, and I would go early in the morning, then have to wait 45 minutes in line, so I could be one of the first 10 or 15 people in order to be able to get that first handful of stuff that might pay for your entire day. So it was tough. It was a tough way
What
to,
time
and
did you
then I
have to
was
get
getting
up
home
for that?
exhausted.
What
Yeah,
time
what's
did
that?
you have to get up for that? To be
Oh,
the first in the.
six somethings. I think the outlet opened at 8,
Mhm.
and I'd want to get there like 7:15, 7:20. So yeah, I'm getting up, I don't know, 6:30. So, I mean, like, people get up at 6:30 all day. And
Right.
they're like, what are you talking? That's like not even that bad. But yeah, that wasn't my ideal. And I just don't like spending time in the cars. I actually don't enjoy sourcing. So now I'm
Mhm.
at the point where almost all my inventory kind of comes to me. And like, that is just so much better. I can just focus on my own hard, which is like other people's dirty crap that they don't want to deal with. Like,
Right.
I'll handle that as long as I don't have to be driving around all day. I feel way more energized not having to sit in the car that I barely fit into with my frame. I don't know. I'm like a somewhat tall guy, but I have kind of short legs and a long torso, so I just fit really badly in cars, and my head's hitting the ceiling. And so anyway,
Okay, so did you also try your hand at clothing and before it was like the games and stuff like that, like what was the items that you started off with first?
yeah, I mean, I tried everything. I would, if I was feeling like I needed inventory, and I don't know if this is the best strategy, but I would start to expand my categories. I would head over to the clothes at the Goodwill outlets, and I'd pick through stuff. And if I saw a brand I recognized, like at that point, I knew performance wear at least. So if I saw a Patagonia or a North Face
Mm.
or a Carhartt or something, I would pick up that kind of stuff. And I would just, so if the first stumbling block on clothes for me, this before I knew about the power of AI, before it really even existed. I had a hard time finding model numbers. Sometimes there's a little RN number, but I'm like, what tag, which number? Sometimes there's multiple numbers you have to Google or eBay search to even figure out what the name of the thing is. And something I love about hard goods, even as an everything seller, which again is just so much less efficient than what I'm doing now, where I'm just selling the same stuff over and over again. But at least hard goods have model numbers I can look at. It felt like the difference between like English class and math class. And I'm way more of a math class kid. So I'm
Right.
like, give me the 12-digit model number to type in. I will do that. But this thing where I have to describe the collar style and the feeling, what is this whimsigoth? I don't know. I don't know what these words mean. That felt a lot more, it felt just like not my specialty. So
Right. It
I'm
feels
still
more
trying
like
to
an
learn that
art
stuff
than
in.
a science.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but there's money to be made. So like
True.
kudos to you, but just not my natural strength. So yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I still
So
think about it. I've tried selling clothes, but just the sell through rate is just atrocious on the stuff that I'm buying. I just don't know how to pick high sell through rate clothing. So and that's a big factor for my store for sure.
So, in a past vlog that you mentioned that you loved thrilling, but had to pivot because the local shops weren't available at your new location. So, therefore, the circumstance kind of forced you to find an alternate sourcing strategy through electronic pallets, right? So, since then, you said that it's been a game changer for you. But what if there were local shops for you to? Do you think that would have, changed where you are right now? Would that have set you back a little bit? Would that have been a little bit of a distraction?
Yeah, thankfully I was able to figure out a way to get past that because that is an obstacle, right? That's just like one less spot to find available inventory for your eBay store.
Hmm.
But that did kind of force me to do that next hard step of contacting businesses. Where if I was more comfortable, I might not have done it, or maybe not as quickly. So I think I'm lucky to have done it. But I'm really careful about survivorship bias, and like I think there's a multiverse version of me that just ended up failing and had to go get a job at a restaurant instead
Right.
at that point. So I don't think it's like a good thing that the thrift stores are getting worse. I think it was just a stumbling block that forced me to have to get up and look around a little bit. But that's just survival. I mean, like I'm lucky. I'm lucky that I made it through and was able to figure it out. But it's hard. It's getting harder for a lot of people out there.
I'm personally, not a reseller, so I'm genuinely curious, right? What kind of pallets are there aside from like clothing? Like what kind of pallets do you personally purchase? I'm not asking for the source, but rather the description, right? Of like, what are the pallets like even called?
Oh, a pallet is the dream. Like, give me a whole pallet of stuff, but I'm just looking for bulk inventory. So
Mhm.
yeah, if I'm like, yeah, if I can get a pallet, that really is the dream. If somebody is like on top of their stuff enough to have pallets and be able to deal with pallets, but also wants to sell to me, that's kind of a rare. Like sometimes it's kind of in the gray middle where I'm getting large boxes or bulk lots of stuff. So I'm just looking for bulk electronics. At the end of the day, I'm way more confident making bold, big purchases on video games now because that's become my niche, and now I can really analyze. Even a manifested purchase for me is like a rarity. All my best purchases have been unmanifested, meaning I don't know exactly what I'm getting. Maybe you'll get some blurry photos of the outside of the pile, and they're like, "Yeah, it's a bunch of video game stuff." I don't know, and I'm like, "Okay, do you have a price?" And so you just kind of have to go based on like what you can see. But I feel way more confident to just put big money down on video games now because I'm like, oh, I see 18 items in those photos, and I know that's going to be this much money, and that's going to make up. You just kind of it changes the math a little bit. I'm able to be more confident, so it
Are,
seems less risky.
are you sourcing from the same vendors now, or are you jumping around, or you have a
Yeah, I would say it's about 10 right now. 10
uh,
different companies that I'm like are on like my list of like, hey, I haven't heard from you in a while. You got any stuff for me?
oh, okay, very well. Right. So there is consistency from the source.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
guess so. I mean, yeah, consistency between the 10. It becomes a consistent stream when if you are
Right.
like making enough. Yeah, if you check enough places. Yeah.
Okay. So reselling generally involves about four core steps, right? I define it as sourcing, processing, listing, shipping, right? So processing is, cleaning up the stuff and taking photos and packing it up, getting it ready
Yep.
to sell. So what percentage wise, right, in your operation could you roughly tell us that how much time is put into each of this process, like then versus now,
Yeah, wow, right. So starting off, sourcing was taking up 50% or more of my time. And now I would say that's down to 5% or something.
Wow.
It's just because I'm just it's emails and phone calls, and I can almost do that while I'm working on other stuff at this point.
Hmm.
Like it's not even that hard. It's just yeah. So the sourcing, once you do the hard work, then it has become a lot easier. Processing has gone up a ton. Maybe that's the second biggest change because I've gone from buying stuff at the thrift store and the Goodwill outlets that I could pick and choose to just everyone else's junk,
Hmm.
business junk, sometimes on a larger scale. So sometimes you'll see the same thing over and over again. And that's kind of cool. but often it's just junk that they don't want to deal with. And so processing time has gone up. I've had to develop different testing methods. Now I've got to figure out how to test every single, type of controller and game. And just like I've tried to keep so processing now, I would say is probably 50% of my time, I would say. And then I'd say it's like 35% uh shipping and maybe, or no, 35% listing and maybe 10% shipping. Is that 100%? I think it's 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
But
think about 10% shipping. 10% of my time, probably like an hour or less a day shipping out of like 8 to 10 hours that I work. So I think about 10% of my time is shipping. I think out of that hour a day, maybe about 30 minutes, or that 10-hour day, maybe about 30 minutes
mhm.
is sourcing and like outreach. And then the rest of the time is just like processing and yeah, and
Yeah.
listing. Listing's still hard.
I imagine that the old way that you had to do it, right? You would still also have to calculate for travel time, as well as you don't really get to dictate your hours as much, because you said, like, I got to be in line by 7:15.
Yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, in a way, having a regular schedule can be good as a human to know
Mhm.
when you're waking up instead of just like this free range entrepreneur lifestyle where you can just like stay up until 2 a.m. and not feel the consequences until maybe 2 days later. But I'm so grateful now, especially with kids, that I've got so much more control over my time. And that really is what I optimize for. Like, yeah, I work a lot, but I'm like 10 feet from all my favorite people in the world. And that's pretty
Right.
cool. So I'm trying to optimize for that right now. And yeah, and like having to be gone for like, yeah, 4 or 5 hours a day and on the highway. Dude, Texas highways are scary, man. The speed
Mhm.
limit's 75 and people drive 85. Like it's scary out there. Like the higher up you go, like the more fatal crashes you see. So man, that's not my favorite place to be, is in a car going 85 miles an hour or even 75 next to other people going 85.
Right.
So man.
So I typically define reselling as, one-off items with like one and done listings, right? But when I looked into your store, I noticed something different. You have listings with substantial sales history, which isn't typical of reseller behavior, right? So this told me two things. Like, number one, you most likely enabled the backend setting that keeps your listings alive when it's still out of stock, right? And then the other one is that your model has evolved into what I call semi-replenishable listings. So I've actually taught a class on this before, on this whole concept, but what stood out to me is that you figured this out independently before I ever published any content on that, right? So I find that most sellers, they don't even know that this setting exists. So I'd love to hear how you arrived at this strategy on your own and what was your thought process.
Yeah, you're right. And hearing you talk about it, I am realizing what a big change that was. And I wish I could give credit to the right person. I don't remember who who brought it up for the nth time. I think it was probably on Tech and Sports Facebook group or something, but somebody just brought up the going out of stock feature,
Oh,
and
somebody
I think
else
it
in
was
the group.
probably yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's somebody else in the group. And I think they were almost even bringing it up of like, I would never do this because then your things would balloon out of. And at that point in my business, finally it hit me like, no, that's exactly what I need. I need to capture these things because I was finding myself like being super sad when I ran out of a certain listing and I have to start over and sell similar off of my old one. And even sadder when it had been over 3 months. And now my own sold listing has disappeared into the nether on eBay. So I've got to sell similar off of somebody else's listing and recreate it from scratch essentially. And now all that stuff is saved essentially indefinitely. It is 99% accurate. Sometimes these listings still drop off on eBay and I don't know why, but most of them I have continued to carry forward and keep that sales history where people get to see the number of solds below an item. And that builds so much trust, I think, to your customer base. So I
Mm.
think it's massive. I think, yeah, man, I should talk about it some more. Like now that I got a platform, like, why not? Like it was a game changer. Like, yeah, sell more
Right.
items. Especially if people have room, like a lot of people have so much room on their eBay store subscription to handle a little bit of ballooning. I do have to do some pruning now on my eBay store. Sometimes even I have the setting where multi-quantity items should go out of stock, but not one-off items. That's the setting that I have. For some reason, half of the one-off items still end up getting saved on my store. So my store is slowly ballooning up with some listings that I don't want. And eventually I'll probably get to a point where I'm going to have to delete delete some, but I'm still at like 3,000 something active, and I'm paying for 10,000 items on the eBay store. So I'm
Mm.
not worried about it. And in the meantime, that's all real estate. I'll prune when I need to, but in the meantime, I'm keeping that sales history and on the photos and the description, all that stuff. You're essentially paying eBay, or you're not even having to pay. Like, you're just choosing for eBay to keep all that stuff on their server. So I think it's worth it. As long as you have room in your store subscription, I think it's a game changer.
What are your thoughts on promoted ads? Like, do you personally use them, and how do you see them as, to use the most effectively?
Yeah, I mean, I've been using promoted ads for a long time, and that would be one of the first bits of advice I would give to an earlier version of me selling on eBay was go ahead and turn on those promoted listings, just start low. And for the longest time, I was at 5%. And in the last few months, I lowered it way down. Once I heard that news that eBay was changing their policy on promoted listings to this, I forget what they call it, like a ghost policy or something, where if anyone has ever clicked through to your listing through a promoted listing on eBay, then if someone else comes and buys it, even organically, they're going to charge you that promoted listings fee. And
Right.
that's going into effect right now in like some other countries, not yet the United States. But I was hearing from other people, other eBay sellers, that when this setting was turned on, essentially the number of items that were sold with a promoted listings fee like doubled.
Okay, so the next one is what are your thoughts on AI and how it might affect the landscape for resellers like yourself, as well as the traditional resellers of the one-off items? And when I say AI, I don't mean like ChatGPT or AIs where, it helps you remove the background. I'm talking about like, the listing tools, right? Where you kind of just like, upload a clean photo and it's supposed to do everything else for you.
Yeah. I think there's still some obstacles in the way of that being a perfect system. I think eBay's API on the background is not perfect. They don't allow price scraping, so all of these tools are having to go elsewhere to find their pricing data.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd rather go straight to eBay. So in a way, I still feel like I am able to provide a better estimated price for an item just going through the sold listings myself as an experienced business person than an AI at this point. But I think you cannot underestimate the potential of this stuff. I think it's going to change everything. And we probably just don't even know how yet. But I can imagine the eBay mobile app in a year or two will be just that. I think it will be a giant button that says camera, and you take a picture of your item and everything else is done. And it says, is $39.99 okay?
Mm-hmm.
Free shipping? And you say yes. And then your listing is done. Like, I think the tools now exist. It's now just about building, UI, user interface on top of it. But like, the ChatGPT is incredible. Like, you throw an eBay photo that it features all your items into ChatGPT and say, generate an eBay listing for me. It's good. I mean, I've never hired a VA, but I can imagine it's as good as a VA within their first couple of months. Like, I'm quite impressed. The pricing data is a little bit sketchy. Again, I don't think eBay wants people scraping their website for pricing data because they recognize the value of that. I think they're trying to monetize that themselves in some way. So I think that's a stumbling block for these tools right now. But I think as far as just saving time as well, for me, I find the biggest time saver is in mixed lots right now. So if I have a lot of 10 different items, whereas
Right.
before maybe I would have donated them, now I can just take a picture and tell ChatGPT, will you generate a title and an estimated value? The other day I had like 15 different mini Raspberry Pi parts
Okay.
for some random Raspberry Pi module. And
Mm-hmm.
each one had a different model number, and none of them were worth more than $5 or $10 free shipping. But as a unit, they were worth a good amount. But I didn't know how to, I still don't even know what item it was for. But ChatGPT did. And I was like, generate a description for me, please, and an estimated price. And it did such a good job. And it turned into a $49.99 item that sold within a week, basically. And
Right.
I don't
Right.
know if I would have taken the time to list those items individually. And still, there's a certain amount of work that I feel that I need to do as an eBay seller to type in all those model numbers for the algorithm. But now so much of that is happening behind the scenes. You just need a good photo. I think it's going to change everything. And again, I don't know, like, again, it's hard to predict how it's going to affect jobs because it's a tool, and it's just about like who's able to use the tools and who's going to not want to use the tools and will be affected by it. But it's amazing. I mean, this is like internet level stuff. I think I'm continuing to be blown away. And it seems so much like the work of a VA is kind of getting obsolete in a way. Like, I don't know. Like, ChatGPT is already doing it for us. I don't know. Like, I think with a VA, you have the ability to learn, But then I would say you pay for Chat GPT Premium, you get a GPT that can learn, and you say, hey, can you change the title structure to be more like this? And GPT will remember that. We're already there. Like we're already at the point where we can have these agents that not only can perform tasks on behalf of your business, but can learn along the way. Like it's hard. I have no idea where we're going, but I'm really fascinated by it. I'm a big fan of tools, and I've been trying to avoid employees because of the weight, but to be able to pay for a tool that ends up giving me the benefits of an employee seems like absolutely game changing. But it is going to affect jobs, I imagine, for sure. But I have no idea how.
What are your thoughts on having an actual physical employee? Because the thing is that, you know, if you're going to employ somebody, they have to justify their keep, right? So either they're going to be some type of earner or enabler. And an earner would be somebody who earns more for the company, right, than they take from the company, so that they have a reason to have a salary. The other one would be an enabler, which is somebody who could do a certain job in your company so that you don't have to be tied there, right? So you could walk away from it. So I see how a VA might work, because number one, they, you know, $300 to them is a lot of money being in a remote overseas country, right? And they're not here, so they kind of have to do this. But if you were to have somebody work for you, I see them as, whether you like it or not, becoming some kind of pseudo apprentice in, you know, and then eventually wouldn't they just pick up the whole business and then work on their own, because they'll probably make more on their own. So I see a difficulty in hiring. What do you think of that?
I agree. And I just feel so bad about shutting down a restaurant where we were claiming to be able to provide a full-time income for people, and then it became not sustainable for us as owners. And it's heavy to promise that for people. So at this point, it's so personal. The business is still so personal that it actually, for the first time ever, I considered an employee the other day, actually. And it was not related to my injury, actually, but it was a close personal friend. We, you know, so much of the business is here in the house, but it was just a close personal friend, and they were in a position where I was just telling my wife, I was like, I've never considered hiring someone until now, but if they wanted to come over, I would hire them in a heartbeat, because I think that it would be a mutually beneficial thing. I see them. I've spent so much time with them. I think it'd be like an instant connection in a way. Those things
But
that I
in your
find so many
position,
of us
there
need.
is a concern, right, of what's preventing them from learning everything about the business and then starting a competing business. You know, especially if it's very likely that if he was to learn the business, he would most likely sell the same stuff that you sell. You know what I mean?
Sure. It's so true. I thought about that all the time. Yeah, of course. That is totally a possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Yeah. And unless your business is already so big that you can be segmented enough that all they're
Right.
doing is just performing a very segmented task of it. And honestly, at this point, it would be. If I ever had an employee, it would be like, here's 5 Rubbermaid bins of Wii remotes. They all need to be processed and inventoried, and I'll see you in an hour. And then I got something else for you
Good.
too.
Good. Yeah.
So it would be a little, it's not like they're managing the eBay store on the back end, and I wouldn't be expecting them to, but
Right.
eventually they might. And then I don't know. I think eBay is a great side hustle, but I don't think it's a great full-time business for a lot of people.
But that's
So
how you would stay protected, by
yeah,
segmenting the work.
right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, but again, yeah, it's just, yeah, things like sourcing are tough, because all it takes is a couple more competitive people who want the same sources as you,
Hmm.
and that can drive the price up exponentially, right? Like that's why you got to be protective over your sourcing with this stuff. I mean, in the same way that I think that private labelers are protective over your items, because you don't want to be undercut by 4 cents by somebody else who sees your sales history. It's like there's just at a certain point, like it doesn't make sense to talk about the super easily repeatable stuff, because recognizing all the easy money is taken, and if there's something you could extract and copy, people will do it, man. There's copies of everything.
Guys, there will be a bonus section at the end of this video, kind of like a behind the scenes look of Joe and I conversing before the show started, so you can see us chatting freely, and then you get to be a fly on the wall. If you're enjoying this content, please go ahead and give it a big like. Thank you very much for watching all the way through. Now, back to the show. This is the big question, okay? And there's a lot of parts to it. So I believe that the best-selling item in your store right now is the used Nintendo Wiimotes that you started in January of this year, right? And actually, since then, it's climbed to a #1 spot in its genre. So, how did you kick off this item? Like any promoted ad, and what was the percentage that you set the promoted ad at?
It was, it was a kind of inventory that we had a lot of. We had a lot of Wii junk. And I have spent a couple years figuring out the best way to sell it. Do you sell it in a combo? Do you sell it individually? I've tried selling those silicone covers on their own or bundled with the thing. And so this particular listing, so I had that exact same listing, but just the Wii remote, that exact same listing, but without the silicone cover, that exact same, with and without the nunchucks. I just had because I had a whole bunch of inventory. So I was just basically experimenting on my eBay store, and I had fake numbers in there for the amount of quantity because I knew that I had like 100 something. So I would just make 4 or 5 listings and put 20 each and just see how they would perform. And
Mm-hmm.
though, so that was I was even doing that a few years ago. But then sometimes those listings would die because I didn't have that setting turned on in my store where it would save it as sold out. And so I had to kind of replicate the process again. But I started to feel that sense of loss, like, no, that listing is so good. And I hadn't kind of tied it together to that one time that I'd heard about this one setting on eBay until I
Mm-hmm.
realized, like, oh, if I just change that one setting, I can capture all of that work that I did. And then I just have to up the inventory again. So that was just the random Wii listing that happened to take off. I don't know. It was promoted at 5% at the time. Now it's at 2.2%, and it's still performing great. I changed my whole store, promoted to 2.2. So it was just throwing stuff at the wall. And now that's the one that I'm like, okay, well, that's how I sell those particular items. I still have to figure out ways to sell all my other Wii junk, but that one
Mm-hmm.
listing is a great way to cycle through my nunchucks and my Wiimotes. And even for the first time recently, I had a ton of Wiimotes, but I did not have enough nunchucks. So I had to go on eBay and go buy a lot of nunchucks just to be able to test them and clean them and bring them back to my store because I was just out of sources. I needed more nunchucks and I didn't want my listing to die. This thing has so much momentum and it doesn't necessarily die when it goes out to zero, but the momentum does slow down a little bit, I've noticed. So it kind of gets pulled off of the algorithm or the websites, the searches, and then it has to get put back up once you re-up
Right.
the inventory. So it's better just to keep it present all the time.
Right.
But that's so cool
That's
that you did that
cool.
research, man. That's
Right.
yeah,
So you're recognizing, exactly what metadata is, which is
right.
that momentum because you sold it. And if you let the listing die, that momentum dies with it. So yeah, that is
Yeah.
key. So how many did you sell, like let's say like right in the beginning in the first week versus like let's say 2 months later? Like the first week versus 6 weeks in.
I have no idea, man. I don't know. I'd have to go back in my sales history. I think
Uh
it was slow at first, probably a
right.
couple a week, and
Mhm.
now we're at more of like a couple a day. I probably sell, I don't know, 7 to 14 a week at this point. So I sell a couple a day, maybe more than that, maybe 20 a week. I don't know. I don't know my numbers exactly, but yeah, something like that. Definitely a couple a day. I'm packaging up for sure.
Well, from the outside looking in, like I actually monitor that listing every now and then, and every time you look at the listing, it shoots out like a different metric, you know what I mean, as some kind of flex to the customers or something, right? And
Oh
there
yeah,
are
yeah,
certain times where it says, how many people have favorited this item, and
yeah.
sometimes it will say that this thing has sold like 7 units in the past 24 hours, so I wanted to see like how accurate that
Cool.
was, from when
Yeah,
you
that seems
started till
right
now.
because people do buy multiples as well. I'm not really counting that in my head.
Oh,
Sometimes
right,
people
right.
often do buy 2, 3, or 4 at a time. So then you can just hit multiple quantity there. So yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's gonna be
So
great. I mean, I think the Wii just has such a strong demand still, and not for collectors. This
mhm,
is not a listing that would appeal to video game collectors, which is a big part of the market. But with that particular Wiimote listing, I've found people that want to use these things because it's very clear if you're seeing one picture, but it says 200 sold or whatever it is, you're not going to get the exact controller that's pictured. You're going to get one that's in similar condition and that is fully tested. I try to make sure that you get one in better condition than the one in the pictures, and typically
mhm,
people are really pleased with that. But you're not for a collector. A collector would want to know the exact condition of the item that they are getting. So, but I've just recognized I can sell enough of these Wiimotes not to collectors. I mean, the collectors want the stuff that's new in box. I'll sell those separately. But it's just about finding your audience. But it was just completely about throwing stuff at the wall. Like I had tried so many different variations of the Wiimote on its own. I don't even maintain that listing anymore of the Wiimote on its own. It's just this one listing is able to process all or basically sell all of my
right.
nunchucks and
If,
Wiimotes, the
if
silicone
it's not
covers,
broke, don't
the
fix it.
straps.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's great. And I just do the same thing. I put all those things in a laundry bag. I wash them all now. And I'm throwing everything in the washing machine now. Like,
Uh-huh.
man, Nintendo Wii products, I just try to throw in the steering wheels in the washing machine
Uh-huh.
because they're completely plastic and mechanical. There's no electronic parts. It's just one physical button. It's just a piece of plastic that moves up and down.
Hmm.
Threw them in the washing machine. They came out great. It's just like saving a whole bunch of time again. So I'm gonna have to make a video about that. We gotta save
Wow.
time. And then I had them all in my bathtub. My bathtub was literally full of Nintendo Wii steering wheels. It's just my life. I don't know.
So,
Surreal.
so for the folks at home, like how long were you selling this particular listing before you started noticing there is momentum? Like it's selling more
Hmm.
than if it was a brand new listing.
Oh, immediately. I think that's my whole focus in this business is just figuring out what works and doubling down. Like if there's an easy double down, and I had for a while, I had more inventory of Wii stuff than I knew what to do with until finally one of these listings took off because I didn't want to undercut myself. You can always just list it up for sale at a cut rate price. But
Hmm.
I'm thinking this is could become a core part of my business because it's inventory that I'm seeing a lot. I just need to figure out on the customer end how to make something sustainable. And man, it's been so cool this option on eBay to have listings that continue to build momentum. And I think just builds so much trust. I think when somebody does see a couple hundred favorites or a couple hundred solds on an item, you're like, okay, even if it's $1 more or $2 more, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get what I see or something similar. And again, you're not going to get the exact thing, but people don't mind. It's great.
Yeah, I personally think the social confirmation is everything, because it's like if so many people have already purchased it, like, like how bad could it be, right?
How
So
bad could it be?
yeah.
Totally.
uh so uh so today, do you still promote this listing? And if so, like what was the percentage then? What is the percentage today?
Yeah, I only have one promoted listings, setting on my store, and it's just a blanket percentage. So it was
Oh.
at 5%, and I've
Mm.
just brought it down to 2.2, and I've seen no difference. So I'm making an extra 2.8% profit on that listing now. It's just awesome. I should have done it years ago. Just experimented with it. And I think I'm still getting shown to the right customers that I am seeing that sales uplift, but without the extra couple percentage points.
So,
So like, I'll take
so
it.
roughly, like how many semi-replenishable listings would you say you have under your belt at the time? Like roughly,
Right now.
yeah.
I mean, at this point, like every console is a replenishable listing. If it's in grade A condition,
Hmm.
then I will just go back on my actives and I'll just re-up that active listing. So every single console from PS4 all the way back to the original PlayStation, from, GameCube all the way back to the original Nintendo, all that stuff. So those are all replenishable listings. Each of the controllers for each of those consoles is a replenishable listing now. So as long as it's grade A, I'll do that. And now I'm even I've turned grade B into a replenishable recently by just doing like a lot of 2 grade B controllers. And then I'll just say in the description, you're going to get controllers in similar or better condition than the ones in the photos. And so that way, because there are those grade B controllers that have a little bit of a scuff on the thumbstick,
Right.
so I don't feel comfortable selling them under that main listing where I'm really trying to represent a grade A controller. But again, the grade Bs were started to take up my time because that's, 50, 60, 70% of the controllers, where now I'm still having to treat those as one-offs. And now I'm starting to turn those into replenishables, where I have a lot of 2 grade B controllers for each console. And so I can just start funneling all the grade B controllers that are tested and working, but have some cosmetic flaw into that funnel. And so I don't know. Some of them are slow and are slower to get going, but I'm starting to. So I always search my actives first for
Hmm.
whatever item I'm trying to sell and see if there's anything I can kind of, build off of versus starting a brand new listing. So I don't know, a couple of hundred at least, probably.
Wow. Okay.
So I
So,
only have like 17. Well, I have like 1,700 active listings in my store right now, maybe a little bit less.
uh,
But some of my replenishables are sold out. So I have like 3,100 total items on my store right now, but a lot of those are sold out.
mhm.
So they're all technically replenishables, but I may not revisit most of those. But I'd say at least a couple hundred are ones that I will be actively trying to maintain moving forward for sure.
I saw a conversation between you and the wife where for you, money represents freedom and money for her represents security. But I honestly think that it's just two sides of the same coin, right? Getting freedom through security and security through freedom. But either way, the goal is the same. So that being said, what is the next move for Joe and Co? Like, are you just happy where you're at, or we're, tripling down and we're going to find more things to, replenish, or, like what's in the works?
Yeah, I would say that eBay is our get rich slow plan. So I plan to keep eBay as my primary income source at least until we hit our retirement number, which
Mhm.
may be in like 10 or 12 years. And then the conversation will definitely change. But I think at least at this stage, we're like aiming for a certain number to be able to retire. And so our kids won't have to worry about us. And at that point, our kids will be moving on and maybe we'll be transitioning to like wanting to be more mobile and moving around with them, or who knows, we'll be on motorcycles or RVs or who knows where our life will be at that time. But that's kind of my goal. But in the meantime, I am looking for other opportunities, product development. YouTube, for example, has become a small income stream. So I'm looking for other income streams at this point that are just not going to rock the boat with eBay and maybe even enhance it in some ways. I think at a certain point, talking about my eBay store on YouTube is going to help me and start opening me up to new sources and other companies. I think at the end of the day, I might be creating competition, but if I, as long as I stay ahead of them, I think I can also be creating business partners at
Mhm.
the same time. A lot of these business guys, right? Like I think these guys like Alex Hormozy are offering a lot of free business advice, but they're getting the occasional whale that wants to come in and get some executive consulting or wants them to buy their business for $1 million or something. So he's able to give a lot of free content, knowing that occasionally like that publicity is going to pay off big. Even Gary Vaynerchuk talked about that a long time ago, where he's making free content, but that helped him get all these deals with these major brands because they saw that he had a social media presence way back in the day. So
Okay, so this one's the really tough question. Okay, so folks are now waking up to the fact that it's not just about listing more, but doing better items, right? So, how would you personally explain better items to someone who is struggling in the community? Like, what is better items? Because that's what everybody says: do better
mm,
items.
yeah. I think that buying items, choosing can I afford this item or is it a good item or not, is a little bit more of an art than people think. I think at the end of the day, it is a math problem, but it's complicated enough because it's not just how much can I buy it for and how much can I sell it for. You
Mm-hmm.
also have to take into account some other factors. So it's like a multifactorial math problem, right? It's also what's the sell-through rate on this item. It's also what's my confidence that I can be one of those sales in the future? Or is there something that other people don't know? Is there some flaw that I don't see? Does it not work? There's a lot of unknowns. And another unknown might be how hard is this to ship? As an early eBay seller, I got stuck so many times thinking an item would be super easy until I figured out I had to package it in this giant thing. Shipping was way more expensive than I thought. So when you're sitting there looking at an item, trying to decide, is this worth it to buy or not? You really have to be taking into account at least three or four different things. So at that point, it almost starts to be more like a feeling of you're just going to be scrolling the solds, you're going to
Mm-hmm.
be absorbing all that data. And then I think there are metrics. Metrics are important, but it's just there's a lot of metrics to take into account all at once. It's not just how much can you buy it for and how much can you sell it for. So many people get stuck in that trap, and then they have all these items that they paid for $3 to $5 for, and they think are worth $20, but no one's bought them for years. And just something's off in that equation, right? So it's tough. I think a good item, I think people underestimate sell-through rate. I think if
Mm-hmm.
you can make $2 tomorrow, that's really powerful. And if you look and see a sales history on an item, and even if the margin isn't great, if you're confident in all the other things, and that's where I think pro resellers start to get better at, is recognizing where something that looks like a small margin to some other people is actually really great if it's something repeatable. And so I think I mean, like Apple products, for example. Apple products will sell in hours, even broken, a cracked screen, locked. As long as you properly describe everything that's going on with the product, there's such a demand for that stuff that you can pay up for that kind of thing in my field. And that's something that I learned early on is if I see an Apple product, I'll pay up. Even if it sells for 18 on eBay, parts and repair, and I'm buying it for 10, I'm going to sell it tomorrow. That's $8 tomorrow. And so that doesn't seem like a great buy necessarily, but I think that there's more factors than people think. And so purchase cost and sell cost is one of them. But I think that you got to take into account shipping and the pain of that, how much you know the space. Because if you don't know the space, there's going to be some factors you don't even know about. You don't know what you don't know. There might be some flaw you don't know. There might be something you need to test that a specialist that's paying top dollar will expect you to have tested that you didn't test because you've never had this thing before. So I think it just comes with experience. And that's why it's hard to be an everything seller
Mhm.
Because if you're constantly seeing an item you've never seen before in a category that you're relatively new to, that's a lot of context to try to be reframing and to try to all those different factors for every single new item. It's hard. So I think as an everything seller, you're making it a lot harder on yourself
Mm.
versus just picking if you are going to shop at a thrift store, or that's just the example, but maybe if you are going to search eBay for lots of a certain item to resell, start with a certain niche and you're going to be able to be a lot quicker. Like there's a new YouTuber, and I wish I could remember his name, but he's so good. And he buys Nest cameras on Facebook Marketplace. He searches all over the United States. He changes his location. He finds people who have just listed them, and he's like, "Hey, I'll PayPal you or Venmo you. Will you ship them to me?" And he's buying these cameras for $100 that he sells for 180. He's like Venmoing strangers, but he knows this niche so well that he's making thousands a month just flipping Nest cams, like brand new sealed, and he's just searching local Facebook marketplaces, contacting them and saying, "Hey, will you send me a payment request? Here's my address. You can just bring it to a UPS store. They'll package it up for you." He's got a copy paste instruction, and it's like a legitimate business, and it's so niche down, but it allows him to take some bigger risks, like Venmoing strangers $180 for something that sells for 400, but he's doing it all day, and like it's really quite amazing. And I think if eventually you also start to learn how to feel out people that might not follow through on their word if you do that long enough. So he's getting so much experience in this super niche part of business that he's able to take these big risks and like spend a lot but make a lot in return. These are high dollar items. It's just like making me salivate just watching his YouTube videos. So I'll have to send it to you. I wish I could remember this guy's channel. It's just awesome.
I really like the concept of that because ultimately, right, I believe in the idea that if you're going to increase your ASP, then you have to start looking into items that have a higher base cost to begin with. So you're not looking for a gem. They go for 400 normally. You know what I mean? The base cost is up there. So once you start shifting your expertise in that direction by niching down, now you're raising your ASP.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
now to him, he's looking at a thing that to him is dinging good item that most people wouldn't even recognize. He's seeing a Facebook Marketplace listing in Richmond, Virginia for a
Right.
sealed Nest camera for $90. And he's like, yes, that's $100 in my pocket if I can get this person to agree to go to the UPS store for me. And like to other people, they'll be like, no, it's in Virginia. That's not a good item. But like a lot of it is about gaining experience and saying like, no, and for me, it's about getting dirty electronics. I know if the
Mm-hmm.
electronics are dirty, that means there's not fresh fingerprints on them. That means nobody's touched it in a while. That means it probably hasn't been tested. That means it probably still has a game inside. So I'm often looking at dusty electronics and I'm like, that's kind of a good item now because I have a pipeline to handle dusty items. I got unlimited microfiber cloths and rubbing alcohol, and I know how to test this stuff. And so I think what a good item is, it's more of an art than a science than people think. It's not just about simple numbers and that. I mean, it
I
is
love,
numbers. Business
yeah.
is about numbers, but it's a lot of numbers all at once. And that becomes more about, I don't know, like that kind of like Malcolm Gladwell thing of that first instinctual feeling. Like sometimes you look at an item, you're like, this is high quality. I don't even see the numbers necessarily, but I know this is high quality. I think this is going to sell. A lot of it is just about getting practice and just trying stuff.
I think the key word that you used here is really all about the pipeline, right? Because if you're going to say things like we make our money when we buy, it's because I already know how I'm going to flip this thing. Like I already
Yes.
have the sales channel. So now that's all that's left for me to do is fill the order. And I just need to go buy something in order to fill the order.
Could not agree more.
You
Yeah,
know?
I totally agree. I
Yeah.
think the money is made when you establish the pipeline. And
Right.
so if you have a pipeline, then yeah, it's great. You just made more money when you can buy more inventory. But almost the buying is the easy part in a way. I think people focus on that too much.
Yeah.
Can I flip it around on you? Can I ask you a question?
Sure, sure.
So in the beginning, you're talking about signal versus noise, and like looking back as a younger person, you'd be more hesitant giving advice because you don't know what you were doing that's working and what wasn't. Like if you were to go back and give yourself or maybe a kid advice, a younger version, what would be your as far as especially as far as like signal to noise, or like what is the stuff that works? Like what looking back at your life, like what was the stuff that worked?
Uh, okay, so what was the stuff that worked? Okay, the luckiest thing for me, okay, is that I skipped a lot of steps in the beginning because my father is an importer and product developer, so I didn't have to start in a reseller space or anything like that. Okay, but I will say that the advice that I was given is far beyond what tough love is, okay? Because I got far less encouragement and more scoffs than anything else, okay? Meaning that when I wanted to do my first item, sure, I was also super panicked dumping in money first, because what I do is more about high investment, high level, barrier entry, right? And so I was freaking out about throwing down $10,000 for my first item, right? And what did I get from my father? Just 10,000. What's that? That's nothing. What are you talking about? It,
Yeah.
it was like I my motivation grew up on negative energy rather than positive energy to get me where I am, right? So at least there's something there, and I was able to find comfort in that. But my father looked at $10,000 as nothing, and therefore it instilled courage in me, rather than for me to just be panicking the whole time, like, oh my God, what if I lose, et cetera, et cetera. You know what I mean? So I grew up a little bit differently. But as far as like looking at what is redundant and stuff, yeah, when you first start off, you just do everything because you don't know what's right and what's wrong. So let me just cover all of my bases until you look back 5, 10, 15 years later, and you're just like, oh, I didn't need this, I didn't need that, I didn't need like all these things. Kind of like like you become a master engineer and you know how to remove all the parts of the engine that you don't really need in order to move the car.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Wow, yeah, thank you, man. That's so insightful. Yeah, so cool. It's so cool to see where you come from too, man. I love hearing your background because you're a unique character, man. But I also relate to you in so many ways in business, but just coming from different backgrounds. So I love hearing where you're coming from, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think you had a lot of beautiful answers. So I like you. Thank you so much for coming on the show. If you'd like to tell the people at home, how to find you, Profit First Reseller, and anything else you'd like to plug.
Yeah, great. I'm pretty much just on YouTube, Profit First Reseller. And then if you're interested, my eBay store is linked in the description of every video. If you want to check it out, it's right there. And that's pretty much where I spend all my time, is on eBay and then sometimes on YouTube, usually while I'm also doing eBay. So Profit First Reseller there on YouTube.
All right, very cool. Thank you much for coming on the show. We'll stay in touch.
All right.
All right,
Thanks,
cool.
Mason. How about you, man? How are things?
Uh, yeah, I got a bunch of stuff going on, so I had to throttle things down and pretty much just do videos once a week on Sunday now. I normally put out 2 a week, and I really couldn't do 2 a week anymore because like I want to finish building a website, and I have some new items that showed up at the same time, so it's time to put those things to work. And because normally I don't have to work on any of my listings, like that's all done. Every time we get a new item, we work on it, and then I refine it over and over and over for like the next couple of weeks, right? But then once it's on track and then moving, it's like if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? So then we just leave it
Sure.
there like that. So I have stuff that sold for like 10 years without touching it. So
The dream. Wow.
it feels that way. Yeah. So I was gonna ask you like as you're developing more replenishable listings, right? When you first start off as a reseller, right? I've noticed that there's a different perspective of how we see our accounts. Most people see like how their whole account with all of their items on the eBay account, that is one income stream. You see what I'm saying? And the way that I see mine is that like, I have about like 20 developed items over time, right? And for me, each developed item is a single income stream.
Yeah.
And I don't measure my store as like, STR of the whole store. I measure STR of each item because because you're repeating it over and over again, right? So you have the data to treat it that way, So
yeah.
So
Yeah,
I'm
very
saying
much
like,
resonate with that. Yeah.
are you starting to see that shift because you have a couple of repeatable items? So now you have
Yeah,
both.
yeah. And for a long time, I was trying to do that, and I just had that setting turned off in my eBay store. So I would be working to find more items because I knew that if my listing died, because for the first few years of my store, I didn't have that setting turned on where stuff could go out of stock.
Uh-huh.
I just assumed, I don't know, I kind of knew that it existed, but I assumed that your store would balloon out of proportion. And a lot of the time, I just need to hear other people talking about it. It was just one more person mentioning it. I finally turned it on my store, and it was just an absolute game changer. Because then, like you said, that becomes more like real estate, where each of these items, the sales history comes along with you. So I think it's just about diversifying in a way, but diversifying within a tiny niche. You can still diversify even when you're doing something like you, where somebody who's an everything seller on eBay would look at what you do and think that it's so limited, but you actually have maybe way more diversification than somebody who's going to the same two thrift stores over and over again. Right. You can get niche and then you can start to look wide once you've found your kind of narrow spot in the world where you're able to add value, or, you know your audience, or a combination of all those things. So,
But for me, it's just about stacking income streams, right? Because what happens is that your first item, actually all of your items, they don't have to be wildly popular, right? When you think about it, let's say you have an item that you're doing. Okay, you do a product launch. You started from nothing, from zero, right? You have no income, whatever. You just do this one item, and this one item brings you $20,000 a year. That's barely a salary, right? You're barely talking about like $2,000 a month. It's nothing, right? But over time, once you developed six, seven, eight, nine, 10 items, and they all perform roughly the same amount of success, you're talking about $200,000 now. You know what I mean? Like once they all get put together, and then some of them are
yeah.
going to pull away better than others, and now you're sitting on a backbone of financial income streams. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
once your business is set up this way, when you look back at doing um, items one at a time and constantly having to replenish them one at a time, and you're worried, it becomes like why was I doing it that way? But the whole life is always like that, right? You look at you every 5 years of your life, when you're 25, looking at your 20s, you're like, what was I doing? When you're 30, looking at when you're 25, what was I like? You do that every 5 years, so that's kind of what it's like for me. But so far, as far as building stuff, like I haven't really found um anything more I wanted to do, because you would every item that you develop, it would just be like another stack on top of it, right? It's another sled dog pulling the rig. So I don't see the point of doing anything crazier with your money, or more grandiose on top of that.
Yeah, and I'm seeing actually a little bit of a turnaround in some of the creators that I follow who have been into I've started, YouTube has started showing me side hustle content, multiple income streams, and you see people bragging about multiple income streams a
Uh-huh.
lot. But I've seen a lot of people, even in the reseller space, coming around now and realizing that multiple income streams is actually quite stressful if none of them are actually providing a living wage, and if they're all so different that it feels like you're running multiple different businesses trying to survive all at the same time. And so I think a lot of the lesson here is you got to niche down and figure out where you're good at, or what you enjoy, or what your heart is. I think choose your heart has been a big recurring theme in my life. Just like to assume that, because I've tried all the easy ways to make money. Like we've talked about this. I've tried affiliate marketing. I've tried like all the easy ways, right? Like here we are
Right.
on YouTube. Like YouTube seems like an easy way to make money. Like, oh, it's infinitely scalable. You could have a video that has 10,000 views or 100,000 views, and you don't have to put any more work in. You don't even have to worry about more customer service. That's YouTube's problem with all those extra customers. You can just literally make 10x the money. But actually, YouTube's an incredible amount of work, and
Mm-hmm.
I think all the easy niches have been taken already, right? And I think business is the same way. I'm just looking for my heart, and I realize I've just started to treat YouTube in a way kind of like the rest of my business, like not to expect it to be easy, but if I can figure out a hard that I can do, figure out some system that from a distance maybe looks hard, but sometimes you just have to put the hard in the beginning. I think I see so much of you, what I love about Tim Ferriss, that I struggle to do in my own life, which is building systems and allowing things to be automated. I like to have my hands involved because I find more personal satisfaction in it, but that doesn't make me an ideal business person in a way. And you seem to be really focused on creating those systems to kind of automate that hard to make it look easy in a way where now it does seem like your life, like you're almost living that 4 hour work week life that even Tim Ferriss says is kind of a myth, but I find it quite interesting, man. What you're doing and what you're talking about is just like it is still real business, but from a much more sustainable perspective of like you just got to follow the money and then just double down on that. Like you said, you have items that you haven't touched for 10 years because why would you? They're working as they are. Like yeah, you don't need to be touching that. But I have a tendency to tinker that I'm kind of like keep continuing to analyze it myself. I think I could be better about that.
That's how I started in the beginning, right? And I'm gonna talk a little trash right now, okay? Which is I am not a fan of young people talking about business, and I'm talking about like you know between ages like 14 to 24. Like I'm not a fan of that at all, okay? And the reason is this. Are there a couple of prodigies, child geniuses, and doing business and stuff? Yes, but they're the 0.1% of the 1% of the 1%. It's very few, okay? And most of them live in Dubai or something like that. Those kids who make millions of dollars, okay? That's something completely different. But most of them, the issue is that when I first started, okay, my first taste of success, I was 26, right? And I can look back now and then tell you that I can tell you everything that I did in order to be successful. What I can't tell you is which parts of it was redundant. I just got this whole, recipe, right? Do all these things, right? Now at this age, right, at 47, I could look back and say, nah, you didn't have to do that. You didn't have to do that. You didn't have to do that. But at the time, I'm doing all these things and then it equals success for me. But I don't know what's redundant. So a lot of the stuff that young people, when they talk about business, when they spew out of their mouths, you know what I mean? You don't know what you're talking about when a real business professional who's much older than you comes back. I imagine if I ever got to sit down with somebody like Kevin O'Leary, right? He would just like rip me apart and just be like, what are you doing with as he's talk about like the noise and the signal and from when he started working with Steve Jobs till now, you know what I mean? Stuff like that. It's like it's impossible to develop the wisdom without time, So when you're really young and you're talking about just like I was back then, like I'm doing certain things, it's successful, but I really don't know which part was redundant at the time when I look back on it now.
It's especially hard when you're young because you do have maybe more of an abundance of both of energy and free time often, depending on your life position, right? Less responsibilities, and you can wake up after 3 hours of sleep and still work all day. And so, yeah, sometimes it is hard. And so you're doing a lot of good stuff and maybe a lot of wasted effort too. Maybe it's kind of hard to pick out. And there's just so much survivorship bias in everything where just because you were the 1 out of 100 that made it doesn't necessarily mean it was all the right stuff that you did. Maybe it was a combination of the stuff that you did and luck and all these other things. So it's hard to extract lessons out of that.
I think it's the willingness to do all of it, right? It's the willingness to throw everything at the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you have all this energy and time, and plus you're not married, you don't have any responsibilities and whatnot. So, yeah.
Yeah. But financial freedom kind of gives you that ability as well, I think, once you kind of get to that level of business where you do feel like you've got the ability to play a little bit. And I'm kind of finally getting to that point where I feel like my eBay business is a little bit to the point where it feels like an actual business. And I have partners and we have pipelines. Like it's not quite the same as yours, but now I'm able to kind of start exploring. That's where YouTube's coming from. And like, yeah, product development. Like, yeah, I'm so open to that stuff. I've been working. There's this guy in Denmark that is making the most incredible. What's that?
You are a changed man. From when I spoke to you 2 weeks ago till now, you're not the same person.
Okay, tell me why.
You weren't as open-minded before now, and
Maybe,
now,
man, everything's.
You're speaking with
yeah.
I heard what you said. Like you are speaking with more clarity now. You,
I
you,
took a break from eBay. I feel so lucky. I was willing to put it on hold, but my wife just took a handle on everything. And it really, yeah, that perspective, even when
mm.
I'm on vacation, sometimes it's hard to really separate. But this being like laid up in bed really forced me to separate a little bit. Yeah. So there's this guy in Denmark. I've sent him like 8 emails. He also owns the biggest video game store there in Denmark. It's an amazing, but he has this device that
Now, this is the part where I'm going to troll you guys for a little bit because I'm going to show you some footage of Joe and I talking about a potential item that could make him go from a reseller to a distributor. So I just wanted you guys to hear us talking about it, but I had to cut out specifically what the item is because those are information that you would gatekeep once you get up to this level. But the point is to show you guys the transition and the growth that Joe is going through from being a reseller over to something more advanced in e-commerce.
And I'm like, bro,
Okay.
I will buy all of them. I will be your wholesale connection in the United States. There's nothing like, so it's like it has the upsell potential. People don't even know this thing exists. You have to like click the translate button on Google just to get the website to be in English to be able to buy it. And you gotta, you gotta convert the credit card. So it's just like it's got enough steps that just not enough people know about this thing, and not a single other product exists on the market. So yeah,
Yeah,
man.
yeah. Look, as long as you're sure you could definitely flip the item, then you should definitely pick it up if
Right?
they'll
I'm
let
just
you.
like,
Yeah.
sell me 200. I'll upsell it. I know I could sell it, especially make a couple YouTube shorts.
Right.
So
2 weeks ago, you were talking about how you were apprehensive about throwing down $1,800 on a pallet, and you're like, oh my god, what's going to show up, et cetera, right? And now you're
oh, that was
talking
a
about like,
sale,
yeah,
$1,800
yeah,
sale.
and
Yeah.
and now you're talking about like sinking in money for 200 units. You know
Oh
what I mean?
yeah.
It's a huge
Oh
shift
yeah. But
now.
that's like
Yeah.
a sure bet. I don't know. Maybe I'm just weird that way, like in some
Mhm.
risk man. But like I'm just like, this product has so much value. If I can just get it into the United States and put some English branding on it.
So everybody who's very successful in life, and whether they're doing the big house or Lamborghini or something like that, they all have multiple income streams somehow. I feel
Yeah.
as if that's the common denominator with all of them. So that's why I talk so much about product development, right? Because that's the ultimate final thing, right? Like you start off reselling like other branded things where the hype is already created by the original seller, right? And then you're trying to find that curated arbitrage opportunity in between. And now instead of just seeing whatever I could find out there, right? You've transitioned to over to like I'm gonna get the same stuff over and over again, right? This is like one step away from being a wholesaler, basically, and then after that you're just like that guy in Germany that you were talking about. Now we have this, exclusive item, right? If you could not just buy 200 from them, but move on to a place where you could purchase maybe some kind of United States exclusivity. Like this is
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
territory. This is my
Oh
area
no,
now,
that
right?
was in my email. I was like, please let me be your exclusive
Yeah, exactly.
distributor. No, that was in the email. Yeah, I was like, please. I was begging basically.
Right.
And he's like, one day I just met with version 2, I'll be able to produce more of them. But I think he's like hand soldering them, and like maybe it's on his like single 3D printer in his basement, maybe like, multiple hours of print time per unit. So I have no idea what his process is. So
But you're
yeah.
figuring out a lot of stuff on your own without formal training because I just recommended that, and then you're saying like that's what I already said in the email. That's exactly like how a business professional would think.